Some of the biggest moves could be made in crypto in the next couple of days, maybe over the next week. We'll break it down for you guys. You're going to love it. It's a weekend outlook. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back in the Tech Bath. All right, let's go into it. And one of the things we want to do is thank our sponsor, and that is iTrust Capital. This is something we've talked about here on the show a little bit here recently, and that is you're nearing this deadline for your contributions to your IRAs. One thing you can do, whether you haven't, maybe you haven't opened one up yet, you can actually still get that tax advantage for 2023 by going into iTrust Capital and dropping an IRA, whether it's a rollover or you want to start one from an ACH, a transfer in, a cash distribution, those kind of things. You can take it now, still get your last year's contribution based on your age, and then you can still put in the 2024. So you get both benefits there. Check it out. See if you guys think it's for you. You can do your own directed investing inside it, no fees except for your trade and no monthly fee. So use our link down below. It does give you a $100 funding reward if you decide to go that direction. All right, let's get into a couple of points here. And Bitcoin attracting $1 trillion from institutions. It's a big deal in the sense of this bull market that we're in right now. And a couple of points within the article. I'm kind of zoom in on that for you guys. The asset bounces between 60 and 70. New executives say the best approach would be keep calm and take a longer view at this. I think everybody's kind of pointing at a long-term view on Bitcoin right now. But a lot of people highlighting the space has to wait for an investment commit from a lot of people that are kind of standing on the sideline right now. And if you look at long term, we believe Bitcoin is a raging bull market. Not only is it up nearly 300% in the past 15, but there's a strong reason to think that it will continue. There's many things that are brewing around this. And a lot of this starts to play into this tweet right here, which is talking about some options that are expiring today. And that is another 15 billion in options worth of Bitcoin and Ethereum that expire today. Now that could cause some volatility, but in the long run, it could be a very short-lived volatility, and I'll explain why. I want to go over to a clip real quick. This will get into a little bit more of why even analysts on Wall Street think Bitcoin is in a good spot. Listen in.
The pullback that we saw, it looks like nothing on the chart. It's pretty remarkable because it was 17, 18% of downside, but it looks like a blip.
That is nothing for me.
It really is. And now, of course, within days, we've had a resumption higher. So I feel pretty good about the trend there as well. The breakout creates a long-term catalyst for Bitcoin too. It's always going to be higher beta. The spread to the 50-day moving average. I looked at it this morning. It was something like 13, 14%. Versus the S&P, which is about 4%. So those are initial support readings. But that's just the risk that you take by.
A lot of people are asking me right now, is this the time to maybe go all in on a centralized asset? And what I mean by centralized is, there's the old saying is, focusing on a single category creates, wealth. And diversification creates long-term wealth. And if you look at it right now, maybe this is the time that some people are saying, hey, I'm gonna double down on some of these major class assets that do seem to be just doing nothing but going up, like that analyst was talking about. All right, so the other thing you have to kind of look at is the quarter one performance. Let me kind of zoom in on this right here. This is the S&P Q1 performance ending the month, 10% NASDAQ, et cetera, and then there's Bitcoin, 67%. So what happened the last time we had a quarter flip over, beginning of the year, there was no ETF in place. So will asset managers start to look to the ETF now as an alternative? Because they're going to look at the board and say, all right, here's the guys. Here's who's winning, who's not winning. Here's the opportunity. Look what happened in Q1. Is this going to start to shift major asset and this wall of money that everybody's been talking about coming into these assets? Bitcoin halving is 23 days away. That'll kind of fluctuate a little bit right now. ETA 22nd of April. So that could be another big one. I've got a clip here from Mark Yusko that kind of breaks down some of the positions that Yusko is looking at post-halving. Take a look.
The halving occurs in 3 weeks. What a halving does, it cuts the block rewards, the amount of money that's given to the miner to secure the network. If those rewards were to get cut in half, as they do, many of the miners would struggle. So historically, what has happened, the price rises, the fair value rises. So that would push it at 100. But this time it's a little different in that instead of just block rewards, we get transaction fees because of ordinals and inscriptions. So let's say the fair value only goes to 75 this time. Then post-halving, you get a lot of interest in the asset, a lot of people FOMO in, and we normally go to about 2 times fair value in the cycle. So in the last cycle, fair value was 30. We got as high as 68, 69. This time, I think probably 2 times because there's less leverage. So that gets us to 150.
All right, so I mean, this is a good analysis from Mark. He's been on our show many times, and he's also looking at other assets there. We showed a clip the other day about him going after Avalanche. But again, this does get you in a really interesting position around what Coinbase, or excuse me, what Bitcoin is going to look like here just in the next few months, especially as we see post-halving activity begin. Coinbase, though, onto this story, sees its third largest Bitcoin withdrawal in a year with 1.1 billion moved in a day. Now, a couple of points I want to highlight here on the take. 16,000 Bitcoin valued at 1.1 billion was moved on March 28th. And then another outflow continued in another transaction, which was around 8,100 Bitcoin, around half a bill. And then another second one around 8,000 Bitcoin, another 566 million. So people looking at this now on a much more longer term cycle, meaning, okay, Bitcoin's in for the run. We think this is going to be the case. We're going to go ahead and pull off the exchanges, lock it away in cold storage. And those are typical moves. The last time we started to see these kind of things is kind of interesting because this is typical of these bull runs and these cycles. Further into this is the deposits. Now, this is what gets interesting. Now another 1.4 billion in USDC deposited on Coinbase has now reignited predictions for yet another Bitcoin pump. And we've looked at this many times. A lot of people look at this, but there's been a little bit of a flat trading over the last few, about the last 10 days, really. Data reveals now that a pump could be offering what could trigger a new wave of buying pressure. And this is the point that we see the last time that this kind of scenario happened. I'll go to the charts here, was right back here in January of 23. And remember that was around 16.8 was, I think, their price. We saw this move up. That was when people were starting to coil into, this is the bottom of Bitcoin. We're going to go ahead and start to look at our position. And if you consider this in terms of growth of what happened from that day to where we are right now, nice 300% gain on Bitcoin since the beginning of last year. So very interesting strategies being played out by a lot of money managers, a lot of wealthy individuals, and also I think a lot of people who are looking at what's happening in these other markets going out there. On to other stuff, and this, of course, I think is one that you have to pay attention to because this is more bullish news. Possible that the judge in the Custodia Bank case could make their ruling this week. And 2 trials starting April 1st, so we'll see this coming up next week. Outcome of this case could be monumental for both crypto and for state charter banks. If you don't know much about the Custodia Bank, we've done a couple of videos on those, but basically, this is a crypto bank. Think of it that way, a blockchain bank, and a 1-to-1 reserve capital, meaning instead of taking $1 and loaning out 10 times, it's a true 1-to-1 reserve. Which is very unique and different. And I think that's why the Fed has not been very cooperative in being able to get Custodia Bank locked in. Other news that could be very bullish is Google introducing a Bitcoin wallet balance in search. So some people look at this and say, it's a situation with privacy. If you're on the blockchain, there's no privacy. But the key here is Google announced that it's expanding its search engine capabilities, allowing users to easily monitor crypto wallet balances just by entering the wallet's address. That's kind of cool, but I think the cool thing here is that Google is going to support all these different blockchains. So Avalanche, Bitcoin, Arbitrum, Polygon, Phantom, etc. The point is that this is legitimizing a lot of the blockchain, and it's also opening up ways in which the technology can really start to be exposed to people who've never been in crypto, maybe don't even know about blockchain, and are learning it for the very first time. Because right now, you kind of have to go through a lot of hoops to really understand what's happening. Google, everybody understands how to use. So that could be a big factor as well. In the ETH ETF race, you've got 21 Shares president, a little bit less bearish than Cathie Wood on the ETH ETF. So Cathie's kind of on the fence here. But the 21 Shares president is a little bit more on saying, hey, this is going to happen. Remember that the situation is they're kind of talking their own book here. But Cathie Wood said the probability is going down for the 21 Shares ETH ETF. Other similar products may be approved in May. One of the tail signs for Bitcoin is that something was going to happen was, again, the communication thing. We've talked about this before, is that there's still a little communication, but remember, they don't have to do as much communication because there was so much of that was done in these S1 filings in the Bitcoin. So a lot of that kind of stuff is already kind of put in play. But I look at it this way. Ophelia Snyder, who noted the main reason for the ETF were approved was that the legal victory over the SEC. That could happen again with the SEC, and I don't think the SEC wants to lose. So that's a big problem. There's not a lot of difference between the filings. So kind of like I said, the groundwork's already been played. They're the same structure, same custodians, the same disclosure. It's kind of just, yeah, it's a little faster turnaround. So maybe that gives you a better insight as to why maybe the ETF does get approved for Ethereum. All of that will make it sense, I think, in the coming next 3 to 4 weeks. Raul Powell came in on a very interesting take here. You wonder why people are choosing to take more risk in search of higher returns in crypto. Well, this makes a grim reading for Gen Xers, my gen. They'll never be able to afford to retire if they continue as they are. And this just shows you the example of what most Gen Xers are going to be doing in terms of retirement, born between 65 and 80. And if you look at overall in comparison to the performance, you can kind of quickly see why people are looking at, all right, I got to start to ramp up my risk level because the opportunities are just passing me by. That in itself is a big statement, I think, because there's not a lot of Gen Xers, though. I think the core of the growth is still going to come from millennials and Gen Z, in my opinion, when it comes to the growth of crypto and blockchain in general. Last clip is Mike Novogratz. He's kind of hitting on a couple of things here that just verifies what we all have been talking about. Self-sovereign is the only way. Listen in.
And you're seeing people around the world participating in the simpler form of Bitcoin, right? An easier access form. And so I think this is just starting. Like, what will happen to prices? Prices are going to consolidate for a while between 75 and maybe 62 or even 58. You could see a consolidation, but each 100 days our government's adding $1 trillion of debt, right? We're at 34 trillion right now. We'll be at 35 trillion and then 40 trillion. That story is so powerful. It makes it easy for salespeople, right? For registered investment advisors to tell their clients, put a couple percent of your net worth in Bitcoin. And you're seeing that happening. This is a process that's going to go for years, not for months.
So Novogratz hits on it, and that is the devaluation of the dollar. What we're going to see in terms of becoming self-sovereign individual, meaning you control your funds, not a bank, you controlling the access to move things around. It's a completely different world, I think, moving into what many of you are doing right now, and that is your first phase of research around Bitcoin or maybe other digital assets out there. So first thing I ask you to do is subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button, a couple of videos, check out some of our past videos, learn. We're a channel that kind of covers a lot of gambit, from super edgy Web3 projects to NFTs, digital assets of all types, gaming, Web3 ecosystem, the next evolution of technology and AI integration, and then the core around blockchain and the main assets, Bitcoin, and a lot of these blue chips. So make sure and subscribe to the channel. Hopefully this will give you your first dip into the education around all this. Hit me up out there on X. It's simple, @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.